Welcome to the Jay and Rob Toy Show. I'm your host, Rob McCallum, but I'm only one half of this circus duo coming at you this evening. Let me bring in the other half, the Luke Skywalker, to my Han Solo, my cohort, my brother, Jay Bartlett. Jay, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Hello, my friend. I am so glad to be here and talk toys with you. Let's get to it.
I'm pumped. Like you said, let's get right to it. I want to talk about collecting. And I'm going to say collecting because we're focusing on repeats. Why do we have this incessant need to collect the same figure over and over and over again? Or are you the anomaly that can just resist all those beautiful iterations of the characters we love?
I am absolutely not the anomaly. I am the opposite of that. My weakness, as you know, my friend, is Luke Skywalker. From when I was a wee lad of 2 years old, when I saw Star Wars for the first time in the theater, all the way till now to my older self. Every single version, every time, I cannot resist Luke Skywalker.
Okay, so let's take Luke Skywalker and we'll take one of my favorites, He-Man. How many is too many? Can you be a completionist when it comes to like how many Luke Skywalkers there must be out there? There's a lot of Luke Skywalkers. When do you draw the line?
For me, clearly I can't do it. As Kenner transitioned to Hasbro and all that merger took place, the technology between the face mapping, it just got better and better. And still as time goes on, the likeness to Mark Hamill gets so realistic that it's like, well, this Hoth Luke is just a bit better than the one that came out 4 years ago. I gotta have that one. So for me, there's no end in sight. I can't stop. He's my favorite character from my favorite film franchise of all time. So when I see him on the shelf, I have to have it, plain and simple.
But don't you know in the next 3 or 4 years, there's going to be a better version? Why do you keep the other ones that you have, or do you sell them off and get something new? Where does that go?
Sell them off? Are you crazy, dude? Absolutely not. Of course I keep them. They're all in my house here. I have Lukes everywhere, every room in the house, on the walls, on the shelves, everywhere. It's just, I like to be reminded everywhere I go of that character. That character's so special to me. I guess I just have to have them everywhere.
Okay, well that's fair. We'll call that one the mulligan. We'll give you the one character that you can't say no to. But do you have an example of a character that you've collected a few of and then suddenly you hit that wall where you're like, I just don't need another Janine Melnitz Ghostbuster figure. I've got 45, that's enough.
Oddly enough, yes. And this is gonna sound pretty weird and you're gonna say, what are you talking about, Jay? Because I have his tattoo on my wrist here, and that is Storm Shadow. I have a few, I would say under 10 Storm Shadow figures. There have been tons, 50, 60 Storm Shadows over the years, and I have maybe under 10. That's one that I think the first and second version of that particular figure, the original Real American Hero line, those are just, you can't top them. So for me, that's where I got the tattoo idea. So I think that's kind of where it stopped for me, if that makes sense. I think version 2 of Storm Shadow is the best. So in that regard, that is the perfect version of that character.
And yet you've continued to buy characters after. So you said with Luke, they kept getting better in terms of execution. But for Storm Shadow,
yeah,
that's not the case. It's been downhill. You've even got the G.I. Joe classified Arctic Mission Storm Shadow. But you thought you said you were stopping at Storm Shadow.
Well, you know, I got a little caught up in the new classified line. It's exciting to be a Joe fan right now. And of course, then you throw the Amazon exclusive out at me and I can't resist. You know, I watched the Hasbro Con online like everyone else did, and it came up for pre-order right after that, coincidentally, and I don't remember pre-ordering something so fast. So maybe I'm full of contradictions here, but I know that I do have under 10 Storm Shadows, and maybe I'll keep it that way.
I know what it's like to have to resist a figure you love. Masters of the Universe Origins is on store shelves now, waves 1 through 4, depending on where you live in the world. And He-Man, one of my favorite characters of all time, I can't pull the trigger on it because I'm afraid if I pull that trigger, not only do I add yet another He-Man to my collection that isn't that much different than the He-Mans that are out there right now, I also have to go deeper into that line. So have you ever found yourself in a case where you've got to put the brakes on because you know it's just going to trigger something bigger than just the one-time purchase? Because there's never just a one-time purchase.
Yes, as you know, you and I grew up together, and we grew up on mostly Masters of the Universe was really the thing that kind of brought us together as friends. My collection got given away to family members, as often these things, they happen. So He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is one line I've had to pull the brakes on, especially as we became adult collectors, and you introduced me to Masters of the Universe Classics, which are still the best versions of He-Man characters in my opinion. Those figures are just gorgeous. I bought, maybe 10 or 15 of them, but that's one that we've seen complete collections of that during Action Figure Adventure, and I can't do that because not only can you not find them anywhere, but they're extremely expensive.
So Jay, I'm of the mindset where I only want the best version of that figure possible. I'm not gonna race to get the new iteration that's just released up for pre-order where I've gotta wait 6 months to a year for it if I think I've already got the best one out there. Superpower Batman, that's it. Superpowers and their iteration of those characters, I don't need anything else. Now, if you give me an adult collector version that is a dead ringer but adds a bit of scale, maybe I will pull the trigger. Have you ever come into a situation, Jay, where you have a figure in your collection that is just awesome and you've seen another version of that character come out in action figure form and you just pumped the brakes because it wasn't as good as the one you already had, or did you just fall off the wagon and pick it up anyways?
There is, and you're gonna love the name because I've said this name about 250,000 times throughout our lives. There is a series, it's a little more obscure in North America, called Robotech, and there's a character, one of the main characters in the third series. His name's Scott Bernard, and it's from the Matchbox line. I love this figure so much, the colors, just the way he looks, and there's been tons, mostly Japanese versions of that character released again. They look far more screen accurate than the little Matchbox one. The Matchbox ones aren't very good, but for some reason, I love that figure. He's always been in my top 5, so Scott Bernard would be one.
Thinking forward, Jay, and where your collection is now and the characters and the figures that you love, do you have anxiety about having to pick up more Luke Skywalkers or Storm Shadows, or is there a character that you really just don't want to buy? You're telling yourself right now, I'm not going to buy one more of those because I've got the definitive one.
That's a really great question. I wouldn't go as far as to say I have anxiety about it, but I definitely know that a good chunk of money each year is going to go to Star Wars and to Luke Skywalker. Each year I keep saying, okay, this is the best Jedi Knight Luke. Again, last year we got the Vintage Collection Jedi Knight version 3 in the Vintage Collection, which is hilarious. That series has been going for like 10 years. We've got another Jedi Luke, and he's the best. But they're just gonna keep coming out with more realistic versions. And to me, of course, the closer it looks like Mark Hamill, the better. So I wouldn't say I have anxiety about it, no. What about you? I mean, I'm really interested to know why you don't like these Origins figures, especially with the $14.99 price point here in Canada.
It's precisely for this topic because I feel like I'm buying the same figure that I've already got in my collection, whether it's Merman, Man-E-Faces, He-Man, Skeletor, but I find that they are a lesser product. Like you mentioned, classics to me like almost daily, and we talk about like how great those figures are, the way they nailed the look, the articulation, the way they blend different types of the lore and all the different spots that Masters of the Universe exists between the movies, the comics, the cartoons, and the original toy line. It's the complete package, but Origins just feels like a knockoff, a complete derivative figure from the original line. And sure, there's a nostalgic play there, but I'd rather just have the original in that case, which I have. Or I would rather have classics if I had a gap in my collection. So it just doesn't do it for me. And kind of this is where I'm coming from for this topic. I'm sick of buying the same He-Man over and over again, especially if there is nothing new or there isn't a perceived increase of value. Now, Origins have way more articulation than the Vintage, of course. They're affordable, which is nice compared to the Vintage, but it's just not of enough a sale to me. I don't want them on my shelf. I don't need them to define my shelf life. I'm good. It would be a mercy buy or a last minute kind of like, oh, I'll just get one because I ran into it. But I'm good holding the fort without any Masters Universe Origins because I feel like I already have the He-Man figures I want.
And I can relate to you there. Do you remember when Funko released the Savage World line Thundercats a couple years ago?
Yeah.
I got the whole set and it was the same. I took it out and the plastic is just very cheap. And the Origin ones are built well, but you can tell the difference between a vintage and the Origins because the Origins really do feel cheap.
All right, I want the definitive response from you, my friend. What is it gonna take for you not to buy a Luke Skywalker?
Ooh, I'm glad you asked that. I'm glad you asked that because one just launched the Archive Collection Echo 3 Luke Skywalker Hoth launched, and I didn't buy it because his face was awful. If you're familiar with the archives, they're basically figures that were archived and brought back, but they don't change the sculpt. Nothing has been changed, so it's the Hoth Luke from 4 years ago or whatever it was, and his face is bad. The Han and Hoth looks great, but the Luke looks bad. I had him in my hand twice now, and I can't do it. For $32.99, no chance.
Not even for the packaging?
Because I've been so... Oh, the package in the archive figures is terrible. It's so bland and boring. It's worse than the original Black Series. And to me, you know, you and I love, obviously, the card art, and it's just so boring and uninspired. I couldn't do it. He got left behind. So that's one Luke I left behind because I've been so spoiled with the way the face mapping has been going and the likeness has been so great. To go back a few years now, I can't do it.
So for example, these are Ron Rudat drawings. This was my favorite figure sculpt. The entire run, 1982 to 1994, is Snow Serpent. And the genesis of Snow Serpent is these loose sketches, right? So Ron Rudat would use a light table, he would create one pose, and then he would draw the figure design on top of that pose a dozen times. And he would change things about it. Like, does he have furry gloves or does he not have furry gloves? Does he have a, you know, padded, like kind of fireproof suit, or does he have a more streamlined suit? Does he have a parachute pack or a giant mortar? So like the giant mortar was a loose idea here. The giant mortar was much tighter in this one. So from each sketch, like the character would evolve, and the only person overlooking him was Kirk Bazigian, and Kirk Bazigian would get in there with his red pencil and he would write in, let's use the fur gloves. I like the fur gloves, you know? So that would percolate to the next iteration. Or let's add the Cobra arm sigil right here. So he would get that feedback. Once they went through that process of creating like 12 drawings or so, then they were like, all right, this is cool, this is an awesome figure design. We're gonna show this to the bosses, the managers, you know, the people that had to sign off on this stuff. And you know, this was Kirk Bazigian, you know, vice president of Boys Toys at the time, working with a senior figure designer. So these were already like high up people, but now they had to show it to management. Because if you're gonna invest in tooling this thing, you're spending dozens, tens and tens of thousands of dollars. Every metal tool for every part costs tens of thousands of dollars. So it's an expensive process. So they didn't wanna just show these. They wanted to show a refined piece of internal presentation artwork. So this is the internal presentation artwork for Snow Serpent. This is signed GW. That's for George Woodbridge. So he was a presentation artist. Sometimes Ron Rudat, the same figure designer, would create the presentation art too. So it wasn't that they always gave it to George Woodbridge, but this one in particular was. So this is my all-time 1982 to 1994 G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero favorite sculpt. I absolutely love Snow Serpent. I think this is just a flawless design. The accessories are awesome. The backpack, the mortar clips into it, the little bipod on the mortar. He's got a great machine gun. He's got 2 snowshoes. I mean, just an incredible design. Then this is, after this went through management, they were like, yeah, sure, go ahead, we're gonna do that. So then Ron Rudat would create this sculpt sheet. And so this is a rotation, side, front, back, showing the sculptor exactly what Ron Rudat intended for that figure to look like. So the sculptor tried to stay as true to this kind of sculpt sheet that the figure designer drew as possible. I do have 2 versions of this sculpt sheet. And originally, like, I hate to break the news to Joe fans out there, this parachute pack and the straps on it right here were initially intended to all be removable. Unfortunately, they came in and revised the design, and they gave him this thing that's like a parachute pack with 1 strap on it going around his body, and it became more of like a fanny pack parachute pack instead of the whole web gear being removable. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Crazy Legs from 1987. His whole harness is removable with the multiple straps. Snow Serpent was originally gonna come with something more like that than the fanny pack that we got. So that's one of the fun things about finding these old pre-production pieces, doing some research on them. You can see the sometimes painful decisions that they made along the design process.
Action figures have changed a lot from when I was little to today in that they're more detailed, they're more accurate, and they have a lot more articulation. And again, I'm a huge toy collector. I make a TV show about toys, but something that cracks me up, and I don't know who this is for, but obviously it's super popular. Like, it really cracks me up when I buy a figure that comes with 8 hands. You know, one of the things that people forget now is that there's like a toy for everything. It was not like that in the 80s. So a huge way that I played was basically I used Lego to build stuff that wasn't being made. And use so the Mego Star Trek 1 figures, I would play with those, but I would use Lego to build the bridge of the Enterprise. I kind of used Lego for everything because I would get a Lego set, I would build whatever it was supposed to be, then it would get smashed and put into a big bucket, so I had a giant bucket of Lego. So even when I was playing G.I. Joe, I would build G.I. Joe bases out of Lego. A Cobra base would be made of Lego, and they would attack, because the other cool thing about Lego, you could destroy it. My grandfather was a dentist. There is a thing in dentistry, it's a wax. It's a clear wax. I don't know exactly what they used to use it for, but I would go to his office and I always played with the wax. So what I used to do with the wax, and I would put the wax on, if it was G.I. Joe figures, it was like bullet holes. I would put a ball of wax on a G.I. Joe figure, take a pencil, put a hole in the ball, then push it in, then take red paint, put the red paint into the hole so it was like a bullet hole. If it was Transformers, like, you know how Optimus Prime's fists would come off? I would literally take the fist off, put some wax, like a big thing of wax there, paint it black so it looked like he lost his hand at the end of issue 4 of the original Transformer comics. I played with toys longer than most people that I went to I mean, in this group, we probably all played longer than we should have, but I honestly played with toys till I was probably 14, like played. And I always did, I still buy and build Legos, of course, that never stopped. But it was at ATST where I just remember this moment of being like, wait, you're not gonna play with it, but you're still buying it? Yeah, I always wanted it and I didn't have it, so it'll go on. So now, something that I do 20 to 50 times a month, like that was the first time. And I remember going through the thought process of, I'm buying a toy that I know I'm not playing with. Do I want to commit to that decision? Yes, I do. And that was the beginning of collecting. I play with my kids. So like if my daughter, it's like when you're playing with your kids, you're really giving them a partner they're kind of playing by themselves with a partner. So at least me with my kids, like, unless it's a board game or something, like my daughter or my son will be like playing with Star Wars figures. And it's not like my daughter's, Ahsoka and I'm Luke and it's like, hi Luke, hi Ahsoka. But there's none of that. But she doesn't want to play alone or she wants to have something to do with me. So at least for me with my kids, I'm kind of just hanging out with them while there's toys present.
So Jay, that'll bring us to our action figure spotlight this week. What do you have on hand that you want to showcase?
Well, I have a comparison of one of my favorite Thundercats of all time, which is of course Lion-O, speaking of main characters. So this guy here, this is the Funko version, which came out a couple years ago. And like the Origins, the positives on this guy here are the price point is really reasonable. He's about $14 or $15 Canadian. However, you can see that he's got kind of like a weird scale to him, also like Origins, where the legs are really, really kind of short and stumpy kind of thing. The sword's nice, detail's okay. You notice when you pick him up that the plastic is extremely fragile, and this, Rob, is actually my second one. Because the first one I took right off the blister, it broke. The leg broke right off, if you can believe that. So that brings us to the second one, which is not so cheap. This is the Super 7 Thundercats Ultimates Lion-O, which is very reminiscent to the Masters Universe classics that we were talking about and that we love so much. This Lion-O, the paint is insane on him. He's extremely detailed, articulated, and he comes with multiple different swords of omen. You can clip it on his belt, multiple different claw shields to represent the painting and the cartoon. Clearly this one is better, but this one might be good for kids. This one is definitely made to play. This one is definitely made to shelf.
Made to play, except for player beware as it may break upon contact.
Yeah, that's kind of a flaw, so player beware.
Well, my figure spotlights this week, Jay, take us to the movie of Labyrinth. And the first one I'm going to show you is a figure issued by Mr. McFarlane in his company, McFarlane Toys. This is Jareth. He is a 6-inch scale. It is depicting the character from the ballroom scene. And great detail, everything from the hair down to the ruffles. The clothing is like bang on. McFarlane does an excellent job replicating fabrics when it comes to figures. And it was just really cool, and it was actually kind of easy to get. I saw this at Toys R Us, but I know it was mass produced, and it wasn't such a hard find, and there is not a lot of Jim Henson property movies out there. But this is not the only Jareth figure I have, which should come as no surprise on our show about collecting the same figure again. About 10 years earlier, I got this figure. This one is a NECA release of Jareth, where we see Jareth from the opening scene of Labyrinth. He is shorter, the detail is not nearly as good, but that cape and that presence that that figure has, it's just fantastic. I picked this up at Silver Snail back in the day when I was living in Toronto. The price tag is still on there, which is something you and I love. And I thought this was gonna be my quintessential adult collector Jareth until this one came along. And while I still think this one is better because of the pose, this one certainly gave it a run for its money and the price point was good. So I kind of broke my rule thinking I had the quintessential one because this was available at the right price. So those are my two figures for the Spotlight of the Week. So that'll do it for another episode of the Jay and Rob Toy Show. Jay, what have you come away with? What have you learned this time? We're talking about figures we may have more than we need of.
Sadly to say, my friend, I've learned nothing. My pursuit of Luke Skywalker is never ending, like my pursuit of the knowledge of the Force.
I have come away with both justifying my current stance on not getting any more of the same figure and yet being tempted by your personality and your desire to have more of the same things that you want. So I am yet again at a crossroads when it comes to action figure collecting, all thanks to our conversation.